Greetings, YouTube. So I've been looking at a monster manual for Starfinder recently, the Alien Bestiary, I think is what it's called, and it's new monsters as well as updated versions of some of the classic D&D and Pathfinder monsters brought into the Starfinder universe. Now, the Starfinder universe is space fantasy, so it's all of the fantasy races you're used to, but just in a science fiction setting, very similar to Dragonstar was for 3.5. Starfinder is the same for Pathfinder. So it's full-blown fantasy, space fantasy. I mean, full blown. You've got magic items, you've got technology items, and you also have these wonderful hybrids, which are literally called that, which are a complete and absolute fusion of alchemical or magical and technology put together to create something new. All right, and the system overall, I think, is very well done. I'm not a big fan of character points, but they're well used in the system, and they're baked in so deep there's no way to get them out. I also happen to really like the fact that the hit points in the system, where the hit points are built into your biology, depending on your species, decides how many you get how many hit points you get per level. So a halfling's going to get a lot fewer hit points per level than an ogre, which makes a lot of sense. That's one of the things that's always been kind of baffling, that a barbarian halfling and a barbarian ogre would get the same number of hit points for their class levels as that. I never grasped that one. I also don't grasp why the heck your strength has anything to do with your fly speed when you use the fly spell. That should be fueled by the magic of the spell, not your muscles in your body. That's a different topic. But reading this, I was struck once again by measurements, which is why you saw that in the title of this video. And even though I'm in 2 minutes in before I actually got to the topic, I'm like that. It bothers me when there is something that even brushes up against science fiction, and it's freely admitting space fantasy is not hard science fiction, but it bugs me when it's using the imperial measuring system. It feels wrong to be seeing inches and pounds and feet and gallons in a setting that has spaceships and vac suits and powered armor and blasters. It just feels weird. On the other side of that coin, playing D&D or Pathfinder with meters and kilograms and liters feels strange. I want pecks and bushels, and I want hands and spans and cubits and feet and yards and chains and rods and leagues and furlongs and fathoms. I want all of those things because they're soft and squishy, and they probably vary from kingdom to kingdom, and they feel fantasy medieval, even if it's a fantasy medieval type world. That suits it to me, just like I want meters and kilograms in a science fiction setting. Now, sadly, I don't think in metric. I would love if I think in metric. I wonder if we'd love if there would be a little switch. I could just go metric, imperial in the back of my head, but I can't. I was raised in the imperial system, which is always kind of ironic that we call it that, because one of the few places on the planet that still uses it is the U.S. I think there's one other country, and I can't remember the name of it, that uses the imperial system. Everybody else is using metric, which makes a lot more sense because it's based on 10, and it's not based on standard concepts like the length of an inch being somebody's thumb, for example. Yeah, it's a much more sensible system. And 100 centimeters to a meter, and 10 millimeters to a centimeter, and it just makes so much more sense. And I can do it on the fly in my head. I know that a meter is a little bit longer than a yard, and I know that a kilogram is 2.2 pounds, and I know that a liter is a little bit low. Is a little bit lower than a quart, and I know all of these things, but I don't think in them. So I have kind of stop for a second. And there's that hesitation. Okay, yeah, okay, that's what that is. And that's what I have to do. I find myself doing that all the time when I'm thinking about measurements and stuff, or on the smaller scale, like millimeters and centimeters, because I have to stop and think about it. Okay, an inch is 2.54 centimeters, or 25.4 millimeters. Okay, I got that. A foot is 30 something centimeters, and so I have to stop and think about it, even though I don't want to, but I do. But in a game, that breaks me out of the setting. It removes me from the setting when it doesn't feel right. When I'm reading Starfinder and it's feet and 5-foot steps, when we're discussing somebody in powered armor with a blaster in their hands, it just feels wrong. And even though it's squishier, it's even squishier than, like Star Wars is, it still bugs me. I want meters and kilograms, just like I want feet and pounds in the Forgotten Realms or Galarian or whatever other fantasy setting that you happen to love. That's what I want there. I know I'm beating a dead horse. I've talked about this before, but it has something I haven't discussed in a while. I know that I have different subscribers now than I did the last time I had them, though some of you have been around for quite a few years, and I thank you for that. So let's talk about measurements. Does it break you out of a setting when you have to think about a measurement conversion? Like for the people that use metric, do you find it jarring when you have to stop and think about what the imperial measurements are? Do you find it jarring when you're reading a fantasy setting and it says feet when you think in meters? Or do you think feet makes sense? And are you really comfortable when science fiction says feet, or do you think it should be meters too? So let's talk about that, because I think it's interesting. I think it's important, because things on that basic level that take us out of a game impact our ability to enjoy it.